Welcome to the third segment of Peru Day. My name is Carla Martinez, General Manager of the Chamber of Commerce Canada-Peru, organization in charge of promoting Peru's participation in the PDAC. First, I would like to thank the following Peruvian government institutions that made possible the organization of this PDAC. Ministry of Energy and Mines, Ministry of Foreign Trade and Tourism, Ingemet, and Prom Peru. I would also like to thank our diamond sponsors, Anglo American, Antamina, Barrick, Cerro Verde, Contacto, Engie, Goldfields, Hadbay, Calpa, MMG Las Bambas, Poderosa, Sierra Metals, Southern, Suma Gold, Epiroc, Nexa Resources, Condumex, E29 Resources, and NLX. In the platinum category, I would like to thank Confipetrol, Incimet, Ferreiros, Hatch, Montali, M3 Engineering, Cumbra Engineering and Constructions, Newrest, MSA Inversiones Perú, Reliant Ventures, Tecnofast, Cluster Minero del Sur del Perú, Pan American Silver, and also at Chile's Bear Creek, Construcciones Rubao, Coretec, Scotiabank, Techchin, Renasa, SNC Lavalin, and Explomin as gold sponsors. Thank you very much. Before leaving the floor to the Ambassador of Canada in Peru, Ralph Jansen, I would like to present a video produced by the Chamber of Commerce Canada, Peru, and F45 called Mining Pride.
"2021 will still be challenging for all of us. Reality changed our habits and our way of working, of studying, and of training. We are taking care of ourselves, but at the same time, we are supporting the population of our areas of mining influence, while we face the challenge to emerge strengthened. We are not gathered today. Nonetheless, technology allows us to keep together, to learn and exchange ideas virtually. Mining is the sector that has recovered the fastest. In 6 months, it has returned to its pre-pandemic production levels, and it contributes 14% of the gross domestic product. In Peru, we can add value in deposits that will allow us to double the mining production in the next coming years. We have great investment opportunities. We will recover the growth, the employment, and we will have overcome the pandemic. We are a country that shelters diverse potentialities and also diverse cultures. At the same time, we are open to the world, working and producing with very strict sanitary protocols. Mining in Peru is the #1 income generator. It takes care of the environment, makes proper use of water resources. We start the wheel of progress, of development and well-being of the country. Fortunately, the world economy is accompanying us, demanding more metals, and in Peru, we have them all, and for everyone to invest and produce. We are waiting for you. We are willing to keep fueling and accelerating the engine of history that gathers us today. The future is you. Pdac 2021.
Without further ado, please welcome the Ambassador Ralph Jansen.
Muchas gracias, Carla, and buenos dias, bonjour, good morning. I'm very pleased to be here to officially open day 2 of Peru Day, an honor to share the screen with distinguished friends and colleagues from the government of Peru. There's no doubt last year was difficult for all of us. For the Peruvian mining sector, there was certainly hardship, tragedy, and challenge. But what impressed me was that there was also solidarity, resilience, and opportunity, all reflected in the robust Canadian-Peruvian partnership in this sector. Solidarity demonstrated in the sectors facing that pandemic with compassion and innovation, and the safety and well-being of workers and the larger community a top concern, not only in terms of being an essential economic generator, but in direct and tangible ways to protect people through the contribution of PPE, oxygen plants and tanks, medical equipment, provision to vulnerable communities, and the extremely careful and responsible reactivation measures. All of this, I'm very proud to say, including Canadian companies active around Peru, Canadian partners, and the Canadian Embassy. Resilience in the sector, which has not only pushed through, but is thriving in the new circumstances. In spite of the obstacles, Peru's mining portfolio remains robust, with 46 projects planned over the next 8 years, 7 of which will advance over the course of this current year, and of which 2 of these are led by Canadians. Finally, opportunity. The sector continues to be a highlight of a very positive and active Canada-Peru relationship. There's no question we're important to each other. Mining has been and remains a huge part of this, and some of the numbers bear repeating. We're the #1 mining exploration investor in Peru, 3rd top source overall of mine construction investment, a top supplier of equipment and services, and a top destination of Peru's mining products, including gold, where Canada was Peru's #1 export destination last year. The potential for further growth is certainly there, but also growth in a responsible, sustainable, and comprehensive way through active partnerships between Peru and Canada, including our companies, to improve mining education, technical capacity, work on regulatory frameworks, strengthening community relations, promoting innovation, responsible and business conduct, and improving environmental review. But finally, growth in a forward-looking way. We are working to ensure the mining sector takes full advantage of the promise of science, technology, and innovation. Canada has a role to play in the local Peruvian mining ecosystem, going beyond the very important nuts and bolts of mining as a partner of choice for green mining, clean environmental energy and resource-efficient innovation and solutions, and advanced mining, automation, digitization, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity. Peru has begun to embrace some of these new technologies in all areas where Canada and Canadian companies excel. All of this to say, Peru remains without doubt one of the leading markets for investment within the mining world, both today and in the future. I would invite you to visit Peru's booth and participate in the virtual program over the course of the day. Thank you, gracias, merci. Stay safe, cuídense mucho, soyez prudents.
Thank you, Ambassador Jansen, for your words. I would like to mention that this is the first time that Peru Day is developed virtually. Next year, we will be back to the face-to-face modality. In this Peru Day segment, national and international renowned speakers will present the reasons that make Peru a highly attractive mining destination for foreign investments. The bilateral relation between Peru and Canada was officially established in 1944. The 2009 Canada-Peru Free Trade Agreement keeps improving our commercial relationships. Regarding politics, both countries share common values and objectives, such as human rights advocacy, democracy, and governability as an international peace guarantee. Please welcome the Ambassador of Peru in Canada, Roberto Rodriguez.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Distinguished entrepreneurs, investors, government authorities, public officers, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the opening of Peru Day, the importance of mining in Peru and the world, challenges and opportunities. I want to thank the Canada-Peru Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to deliver the welcoming remarks in the framework of the Peruvian participation in the Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada Pdac Virtual Edition 2021, and have the possibility to address this distinguished audience. Last year was complex and marked by multiple challenges at a global level due to the health crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, which unfortunately still affects us, and the recession of the global economy. This context has put to the test the capacity of management and adaptation of countries as a whole, especially those on the path to development, including Peru. From that perspective, the challenges faced have also deserved great attention and effort for the mining sector. As everybody knows, when we talk about mining, we talk about Peru. Due to its great natural wealth, Peru is recognized as a global leader in the mining sector. Peru has 6 of the 10 most traded metals worldwide, which places us in a leading position with regards to the production of some of them, such as gold and copper. Similarly, Peru maintains competitive production costs and enjoys a solid experience in the industry on the basis of knowledge, training, talent, and versatility of its human resources. As a result, Peru's continued presence in the successive editions of the Pdac, as in this year's virtual edition, ratifies its mining affinity and its commitment to continue playing an important role in the global mining industry, while conveying the unmistakable and confident message that our country is a great place and attractive destination market for investment in mining. This is, of course, linked to a coherent and credible macroeconomic policy, political stability, and favorable climate for investment. Canada can attest to this, as it is one of the largest foreign direct investors in Peru's mining sector. Ladies and gentlemen, 2021 is an emblematic year as we commemorate the bicentennial of the establishment of the Republic of Peru. In that context, Peru is optimistic about the resilience and momentum of its mining sector, capable of adapting to new challenges and remaining one of the main drivers of national development. In complex times like this, Peruvian mining with impetus and determination will continue contributing to the process of reactivating our economy, leading the growth among our Latin American partners. As a result, a safe, inclusive, competitive, modern, and sustainable mining industry will continue its consolidation. Apart from the negative effects of the global health crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic, the complex scenario we face offers us an opportunity to conceive with better clarity the prospect of mining in the future, one which boldly favors a national development project, respecting the environment and meeting the demands of the population without losing sight of the Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 Agenda. Friends, even if this year you will not be able to see in person the Peruvian Red Tide, which runs annually through the corridors and halls of the Pdac venue, I guarantee that this Red Tide is present virtually at this exact moment, ready to participate with the same enthusiasm as it has in the past in a new edition of the Pdac. It is a fact that Peru will continue to be one of the greatest and most important players in this magnificent event. Welcome everyone to Peru Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your words, Ambassador Rodriguez. Peruvian economy was deeply impacted by the pandemic. Considering the deep recession experienced in 2020, we are expecting a strong growth for 2021, which anticipates an accelerated execution of public investment and better international conditions thanks to the implementation of a COVID vaccine. The challenge for Peruvian economy is to accelerate the GDP growth, promote a shared prosperity, and provide its citizens with protection against negative economic impacts. To share the World Bank perspective, please welcome Marianne Fay, Country Director Peru, Chile, Bolivia, and Ecuador of the World Bank.
Greetings. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and to present the key conclusion of our recent mining sector diagnostic. But first, let me give you a bit of background on Peru. Within the Latin American region, Peru stands out as a success story. Over the course of the last 2 decades, it grew at an average of 4.6%, lifting 6 million Peruvians out of poverty. And of course, mining has been one of Peru's principal engines of growth during that period. 11% of GDP, 62% of all exports, and of course, a major source of foreign direct investments. Some $65 billion in investments over the 2000-2020 period, which enabled Peru to increase its copper production 5-fold. Mining revenues also help the government pay its bills. Some 15% of public expenditures are funded from mining revenue. The mining canon is a major source of funding for regional and municipal governments' public investments. So mining was a key part of the success of Peru's success story. But the success story seemed to be running out of steam even before COVID hit. Growth was slowing, social conflicts were growing, many, but not all linked to mining. And then came COVID, which has turned Peru into the country in the world with the worst combination of excess death and economic costs. So what COVID did was to reveal how the tremendous inequality that characterizes Peru's economy, society, and geography made Peru much more fragile as a success story than would have been expected for such a success story or for a country of its income level. Just to give you an idea of the dimensions of this inequality, the difference in development outcomes between Lima and the department of Huancavelica, which is in the mining highlands of Peru, is similar. This difference is similar to that between the US and Haiti. So clearly some essential ingredients are still missing in Peru's recipe for resilient, sustainable development. And COVID has only increased the urgency of addressing these missing pieces. Now, my purpose today is to share with you what we at the World Bank see as the challenges that Peru faces to bring to fruition its impressive pipeline of mining investment projects. And we believe that if Peru does it, that we have recommendations and suggestions for Peru to be able to do this in such a way that mining can become a driving force for shared prosperity in mining regions, most of which are lagging regions. And we believe that a key message of this report is that unless mining can actually become a driving force for local development, Peru will likely not be able to fully develop its pipeline. Today, few communities in Peru's mining region see mining as a force for good or as a source of well-being. The question then that we pose in our report, and I'm going to try to answer here, is what would it take to get the mining communities of Peru to welcome mining investments in their region? Now, before answering, some background on the mining sector in Peru from a mining sector diagnostic. Let me start with the challenges. Peru's geological wealth is remarkable. It's ranked second in the world in both production and reserves of copper. It is the second largest producer of silver in the world and has the world's largest reserves. And there's a number of other factors that have helped Peru become a competitive country for mining. A key one, of course, is the stability and performance of the 1992 mining law that aimed at giving investors legal certainty as well as a well-defined, stable tax regime. Another is the recent efforts by the government of Peru to develop a comprehensive set of rules around environmental and social frameworks. So environmental certification, citizen participation, prior consultation, and greater transparency. Now, these structures are still maturing, but they have begun to introduce more sustainability to mining activities. And the best indicator of Peru's mining strength is its investment project, its investment pipeline. Some 48 projects valued at something like 57 billion to be developed over the next 2 decades. This would be enough to double again copper's production. So some great strengths, but also some significant weaknesses. And Peru's mining has struggled, particularly in recent years, with social conflicts. As a result, a number of technically and financially solid mining projects totaling potential investments of about $12 billion, 6% of GDP, have been put off. So what's behind these social conflicts and low acceptability of mining? Well, over the last 2 decades, different events related to involuntary settlement, land acquisition, water quality or quantity disputes, traffic and transport issues linked to mining outputs, or very simply a lack of economic opportunities for local communities have led to these many conflicts and made mining a highly controversial issue in some critical parts of the country. Now, in some cases, it's been about misinformation and fear. In others, it has been a well-informed judgment by these communities about the potential risks and negative impacts relative to the benefits. Now, it's not just the social conflicts that have resulted in Peru becoming a less attractive mining destination. Another factor is the loss of regulatory competitiveness and what is perceived as the general absence of the state. There is no clear national policies in Peru to anchor the sector, provide direction, and ensure that mining contributes to sustainable and equitable development. Now, let me develop these points based on the mining sector diagnostic. So the mining sector diagnostic of the World Bank is a pretty standard product that offers concrete policy recommendation that, based on our global experience, could lead to not just more mining, but better mining. So the goal here was to identify the elements of a strategy that we could work with the government and other partners on to transform intensive mining activity into more prosperous communities and regions. Let's look briefly at the main areas for improvement that we identified. First, not enough investments in dialogue. Alignment, even within the government, can improve. Ministry of Mining and the Ministry of Environment have different visions concerning mining and its contribution to Peru's development. And so far, this has kept them from jointly drafting effective rules and working together in alignment under national policy. Now, that is changing, I believe. But also, dialogue more generally amongst companies, communities, government, and civil society typically only occurs when a crisis arises. It's usually triggered by either the threat of a conflict or an actual conflict. Then these conflicts are addressed in negotiation roundtables where the sector dialogue becomes a transaction. It results in the signing of different agreements that often go unfulfilled, which then re-triggers the initial conflict, typically with even greater impetus. Typically, this will be a company giving away some payment to build a new school in order to negotiate the opening of a blocked road. That's a purely transactional exchange that does not create a long-term engagement. Now, another key issue is that Peru does not make it easy to find the minerals. Countries that are best able to attract investments for exploration have a deep knowledge of their geology and make it easily accessible. They grant concessions efficiently. They have predictable timelines for issuing exploration permits. They know upfront, the companies know upfront as a result what is needed, how long it'll take, and what they will get in return. In Peru, the Geological Service, INGEMET, lacks modern geophysical data that covers the Sierra, which is where the country's mining potential lies. And obtaining a mining concession today may take from 8 to 12 months. And before effective exploration can begin, 2 more years may pass in carrying out prior consultation and obtaining environmental certifications and sector permits. Now, this explains the notable drop in exploration investments in Peru from annual investment peaks of around 700 million at the start of the decade to less than half, about 300 million in recent years. A third critical issue is lack of trust. As we all know, trust is gained over time through clear and honest communication and through actions. In most countries, governments inform and consult their citizens before approving or undertaking major infrastructure or major industrial investment projects. It means explaining, listening, communicating, engaging repeatedly. It also means putting information in the hands of citizens, making it available and transparent. But trust is low in Peru. It has been eroded by years of scandals and broken promises. Communities have very little trust in regulatory agencies such as SENACE, UEFA, or SINERMIN, etc., as they perceive the agency, rightly or wrongly, to be vulnerable to political pressures and the influence of mining companies. So communities often do not recognize the environmental certifications that are issued. They do not trust the results of OEFA's air water pollution controls. And this lack of trust is at the heart of social conflicts, even as the work of regulators is not enough to generate the trust and acceptance that amongst communities that companies want or hope for. The companies still have to go through all the trouble, the time, the expenses of getting all the required certifications, permits, and authorization. Further, approval times for an environmental impact assessment or for prior consultation have become completely unpredictable. So this creates a double uncertainty for the mining companies. Uncertainty as to when clearances will be granted, and uncertainty as to whether these will prove effective at preventing social conflicts. Now, in Peru, two mechanisms exist for consultation dialogue: indigenous people prior consultation and a citizen participation system. Now, there are three problems with prior consultation that can be remedied and that need to be remedied. One is they emphasize procedure rather than substantive aspects. Second, there's no database of indigenous people. Sometimes there's no easy answer to the question of, are there indigenous people living in the project's area of influence? Who should be consulted? And then timing. It takes 500 to 1,000 grassroots exploration projects to identify maybe 100 targets for advanced exploration. That in turn leads to 10 development projects, one of which becomes a profitable mine. Therefore, focusing prior consultation for exploration on an uncertain mine operation raises indigenous people's expectations and worries far too early without reasonable justification. And then, of course, there's government's role in managing wealth. The Peruvian government is the main force behind the transformation of mineral wealth into well-being, from ore into education, foods, and jobs. Also, and the government has the power to do so by law. Underground resources belong to the states. That is to all Peruvian, of course. And mining companies operate under concessions so that the state can benefit through the revenues it generates. But before thinking about revenues, the country needs to make sure it does not get surprised with unexpected costs and responsibilities. That the closing of mines will be paid for the mines themselves is not even a certainty, because the ministry lacks a good framework to predict and manage the closure costs. Then, when it's time to collect taxes, Peru's government is leaving money on the table. Our study has highlighted some major issues regarding mining revenues. The Ministry of Economy and Finance could close a number of loopholes and modernize taxation so that the National Tax Authority strengthens its ability to tackle tax evasion. Unfortunately, to date, inspection systems to discourage the undervaluation of concentrate shipments have not yet taken advantage of some of the new technologies that are available. And then, of course, once the money has been collected, spending it well and generating development has proven a challenge for Peru. As I mentioned before, half of the mining revenue goes into the national tax coffers, but the other half, the canon, returns to the producing regions and districts. So transforming this revenue into local human development is primarily the task of mayors and governors. Unfortunately, their efforts have been chronically disappointing. This is due to their low capacity, the low capacity of local governments, but also the timing and the manner of disbursement, which comes late in the year, is unpredictable and makes it very difficult to plan multi-year investments. So as a result, the canon is typically used to finance small projects without much development impact. So we worked with all sorts of stakeholders. We interviewed dozens of stakeholders to discuss what the priority is for them, or would be, amongst a long list of policy and regulatory options. So the stakeholders were asked to vote for what they thought would most effectively improve the current state of affairs. And here I have to say that Peru stood out relative to the other 12 countries around the world where we've recently done this exercise. Peru was one of the few countries to have such a high level of convergence on what needed to be improved or reformed. Whether government or civil society organization or the industry, there's a tremendous amount of convergence and tremendous amount of common ground. So that is indeed a very good news. Now, they also agree about what they think are the key things to address, right? So, and how to address them. So, as I mentioned earlier, Peru has a very rich pipeline of projects, and 48 projects under consideration for an estimated investment of more than $57 billion in the coming decade. Sounds very promising, but the cause for worry that we identified working with all the stakeholders are the following. One is time. Half of the upcoming new projects are in the pre-feasibility stage and 30% are in the feasibility stage, meaning that about 80% of the project will take at least 7 years to enter production. Second, as we've discussed, is social acceptability, but this is made worse because of the 48 new investments in the pipeline, at least 39 are greenfield, and at least 28 would be open pit. So this means mines in new places with new communities that are not used to mining and mines that make huge holes in the ground. So environmental certification, citizen participation, prior consultation, granting of mining permits will be highly challenging for these projects. And the biggest challenge, of course, is not just in designing projects that will keep those communities safe and somehow benefit them, but also in getting the communities to trust that these designs will indeed bring more benefits than costs. A third one is the ability to generate local development. Business opportunities for local suppliers are not fully seized. This is true for Peruvian suppliers, for the development of infrastructure within economic corridors, with helping develop local farming and geotourism potential. So currently, Peru is advancing some promising initiatives like the technological roadmap, and such initiative will need sustained government policy and leadership to help drive this economic diversification that can then work with the minings to bring local economic development. And then finally, but then also the issue of climate change. Now, at the global level, the mining industry has embraced the challenge of greening their production and trying to tackle climate change. And that within Peru could seed business opportunities for green technology. And then there's two related issues. One is artisanal and small-scale mining, how to formalize it to ensure that it takes place without polluting rivers and improving health and safety conditions. And then the urgent and difficult challenge of halting illegal gold mining. This has destroyed some 53,000 hectares of Amazon jungle with the use of machinery in riverbeds, especially in the Madre de Dios region of the Amazon. Now, artisanal small-scale mining and illegal mining need to be controlled. Otherwise, it really also gives a bad name to the entire mining industry. Now, let me summarize these challenges by referring to the conditions required, what the conditions we think are required for new projects to thrive. So in brief, we think that the next generation of Peruvian mines will succeed both as mine to produce much needed inputs for the world economy, but equally or most and more important as engines of local economic development, if the timeline for new investment becomes more predictable, if new projects build resilient social acceptance, if new projects enable territorial shared prosperity, if new projects minimize the material footprint on the environment and the climate, and if artisanal and small-scale mining operates responsibly and illegal mining is halted. So that gives, that brings us into a whole list of actionable government reform that we discuss in the report and that we're currently discussing actively with the government. And let me just emphasize some of the most important ones, because it's quite a long list, I have to say. So just parking them into these 5 challenges. So one, to increase mining investments and enable the pipeline to become more predictable, we need institutional efficiency. And here we have 2 key recommendations. One is to provide a framework for strong institution by developing a clear long-term strategy. So we recommend that Peru initiates the formulation of a well-concerted, long-term mineral national policy that provides strategic direction and enables efficient and effective interministerial coordination. And there I'm very happy to note that the government seems well on its way to doing this, and it has started working on the idea of this national policy and putting in place what needs to be done so that this can eventually be adopted. Second, Peru has to allow exploration to become more cost-effective, hence more attractive. And here the idea is to, or the key recommendation is to develop and launch an ambitious and well-funded National Geological Knowledge Plan under INGIMET, especially on the critical minerals for a low-carbon economy, because that could become a real new source of income and competitiveness. Now, for better mining investments that manage to create social acceptance, we need to upgrade, Peru needs to upgrade environmental certification to ensure it is capable of generating trust. So one of the things we propose is to make the environmental certification process and oversight fully transparent to the public. And we also need to ensure indigenous people's rights. And here we propose that provide support to the Ministry of Culture for updating and completing the Indigenous People database, and to prepare and approve guidelines for prior consultation that are applied to mining exploration, focusing mainly on access to community land and water sources. And then for mining to really be able to contribute to local prosperity and well-being, we believe it's critical for Peru to adopt a framework, an approach of economic corridors in mining regions. So economic corridors where you can really, bring different investments together and try to finally create the impetus rather than continue with a soccer field here and a school here and a little road there. Finally, to green mining investments for climate mitigation, we believe it's absolutely critical, and it's perfect timing for Peru to develop a roadmap for greening the mining value chain, working, of course, with all the stakeholders in the industry. And then on more and better and artisanal small-scale mining, which again is critical to restore faith in the possibility of clean mining. There we recommend that Peru designs and implement a new licensing and permitting scheme for artisanal and small-scale mining that can be combined with technical assistance and help in accessing the right kind of equipment, so that all of this is conducive to formalization and better environmental and social practice. Now, after this long list of items, I'd like to share a final thought. Considering all the resources and wealth that mining companies mobilize from these districts, mining can and should become a key enabler of territorial development. But as we all know, it's easier to turn minerals into money than to turn money into shared prosperity. And we've all learned that easy answers have had terrible returns. Helping others is powerful, but can imply some unexpected risks. Certain ways of helping can actually do more harm than good. As Rosabeth Moss-Cantor in Harvard Academic puts it, when we bring change to people, they experience it as a violence. But when people bring change to themselves, they experience it as a liberation. So authentic engagement requires nuance and empathy, not marketing and manipulation. So as a final thing, let me quote from a giant of policy, George P. Shultz, a former US Secretary of State, Treasury and Labor, who recently died a couple of months ago in December, just a few days before his 100th birthday. He published an editorial in the Washington Post that really struck me, and it was about what he had learned in his 100 years. And this is how he started his op-ed. This man who was the greatest negotiator, one of the greatest negotiators in history. And there goes. December 13th marks my turning 100-year young. I've learned much over that time, but looking back, I'm struck that there is one lesson I learned early, and then relearned over and over. Trust is the coin of the realm. When trust was in the room, whatever room that was, the family room, the school room, the locker room, the office room, the government room, or the military room, good things happen. When trust was not in the room, good things did not happen. Everything else is details. And let me end here. Thank you very much for your time and interest.
Thank you, Ms. Fay, for your words. Before presenting the next speaker, I would like to share the results from a national survey conducted on June 2020 on the citizens' perspective regarding formal mining and its role in the current economic crisis. The survey was applied to more than 1,000 citizens from different socioeconomic sectors in Lima and provinces. 83% considered the role of mining in the country's economic recovery as highly important. 87% was in Lima and 80% was in the provinces. Both results reflect the sustained effort made by the industry for several years to promote best practices and formal employment in more than 17 regions in the country. Please welcome Pablo de la Flor, Executive Director for the National Society of Mining, Oil and Energy of Peru.
Hello. First of all, thanks, Carla, for this invitation to the Peruvian Canadian Chamber of Commerce for the opportunity to address you today. It's kind of strange participating in this Pdac from far away from Peru. Hopefully next year I'll get a chance to see you and have this presentation directly and deal with you all face to face. But for the time being, this is the best we can do. So thank you for tuning in. I will share with you some information, a presentation on what is happening with mining in Peru. I will provide some background information about the importance of mining in Peru and Peru's role worldwide in terms of its relevance for mining. I will also provide you with some details on the evolution of mining in this COVID era. And we'll close with some remarks about what is happening with investment and the outlook for mining into the future. I should point out a very bright future for mining in Peru. So for those of you who are not that familiar with the mining industry in Peru, let me just say that mining is a traditional activity. Peru has been mining for several centuries, and currently mining has become the most important engine of growth in the country. Mining accounts for 10% of GDP, the most important industry in Peru. It explains about 60% of total exports, half of those accounted by copper sales. Also, we provide the government with 20% of all income tax collected from private companies in addition to royalties and other special taxes. Mining investment represents about 20% of total private investment in the country, so a very significant engine of growth. Of course, private investment being the most important force explaining this very successful spree of growth that we have had over the last decade in the country. And mining generates about 1.5 million jobs. That's direct and indirect jobs. So in a nutshell, mining is one of the most important activities in the country. It is the most dynamic engine of growth, and it has been playing a crucial role in economic recovery in this COVID era. In terms of Peru's mining profile, international mining profile, let me point out to a few tidbits that are quite relevant. Peru, of course, is the second most important producer of copper and silver worldwide. It ranks third in terms of zinc production, 4th worldwide for tin, and 8th for gold. Not only are we a very relevant producer for these 5 minerals, but we also account for a significant part of proven reserves for the 5 metals that I just mentioned. So Peru is a country that plays in the International Mining World Cup. As you probably know, we're soccer buffs here. And we're a very relevant player, not just regionally, but internationally as well. As many of you know, Peru's mining industry took a dive as a result of COVID. We were very severely impacted by the extreme social isolation measures that were put in place in order to fight against COVID. The government was very quick in imposing a number of restrictions that aimed at stopping the spread of COVID. Unfortunately, we became the only country in Latin America where mining implemented these extreme measures. And of course, the data is very clear as to what consequences that had. Almost a 50% drop in terms of our mining GDP, starting in April and May, when the extreme measures were put in place. Subsequently, the government relaxed some of its restrictions, and as a result, we were able to recover some of the lost production. And actually, what we see is a very significant recovery of mining activity in the country. I'm glad to say that as of January, we are already at above pre-COVID levels in terms of production, and significantly above what in terms of the exports. This was possible thanks to the implementation of a very significant package of measures that the mining companies put in place to fight against COVID. We implemented very strict COVID-19 protocols in all mining operations. In many cases, we went beyond what government stipulated as standards. We basically learned from the international experience in managing COVID contagion, and we're able to actually keep that to a minimum. We also implemented a massive program of COVID diagnosis and antibody testing. Each mining worker has been subjected to at least 6 to 8 tests so far. That has enabled us to basically continue operating with a very reduced number of COVID cases in operations. We also implemented longer rotating schedules and put in place other isolation measures. This, of course, entailed adapting existing facilities so as to secure the health of workers, implementing social distancing using the standards that the government provided, which again are very strict standards. We also enhanced social distancing in all the different phases of production, and we applied the same rigorous and strict protocols that we were implementing inside the mines to with suppliers. So it's basically the same strict protocol, and again, I'm glad to report that has worked quite well. Also very important, and let me stress this, so all mining companies reframed the way they were dealing with communities, and measures were put in place to minimize the chances of contagion from mining workers to communities. So a number of protocols were also developed for interactions with the community, and a great deal of usage of new communications technologies to basically reduce the level of physical contact with community members. Again, the outcome has been quite positive in terms of very, very reduced and controlled threat of contagion from mining workers to community members. Also, very significant support provided by the mining companies to the government in order to assist in efforts to fight the COVID pandemic. And let me quite briefly refer to some of these major points. We have provided government with over 750,000 rapid diagnostic tests. We're quick to move early on in the pandemic and provided the support to the government, which was crucial to basically put in place the protocols to keep communities safe from COVID. We have provided 28 oxygen plants, and this is very important because one of the main issues right now in Peru in terms of a fight against COVID is the lack of availability of oxygen. So we moved very swiftly to put in place plants to support government efforts and provide assistance to hospitals. We also donated 4 million liters of oxygen, have provided hospitals with over 650 beds, ventilators, ambulances, and we have also put in place a number of programs aimed at assisting more vulnerable populations in the area of influence of the mines. Over 2,500 tons of food that have been distributed throughout the country by mining companies, again, to assist most vulnerable populations in the area of influence. More recently, we defrayed part of the costs of the logistical cost of transportation for the vaccines that came, the first batch that came from China, over 1 million vaccines that finally made it to Peru last week. And we are currently working with a couple of universities developing local versions of mechanical ventilators for the emergency beds in the hospitals, and also developing quick molecular testing. So very significant contribution on the part of mining to government at the central, regional, local levels to assist in this fight against COVID. Getting back to this bright story of recovery of mining in Peru, as I mentioned, we have already surpassed pre-COVID production levels, especially so in the case of copper. We are at 110% in terms of, that's 10% above where we were before the isolation measures. The same is true in the case of zinc, almost 50% in terms of where we were. And in the case of tin, also a very successful story of recovery. We're at 144% in terms of the average reached the 12 months before the pandemic measures were put in place. Silver, also very positive recovery. We unfortunately don't see the same thing in gold, and this has an explanation. Most of the gold is produced by, a significant part of it is produced by medium-sized mining companies that were only included in the second stage of the reactivation process by the government. So they're lagging behind, but we expect to see full recovery in the months ahead. So it's a very bright picture in terms of what has happened to production. In recent months, we've been able to overcome the difficulties that we had last year, and we're currently working at full steam. GDP, the mining GDP, already above pre-pandemic levels and improving last couple of this month of January as well. we're at 8 percentage points above levels obtained before the pandemic. So this summarizes a bright story of a mining recovery, and the same is true for exports. The value of exports is already 26% above pre-pandemic levels, helped by the recovery of production, and of course by the positive prices, the very bright international context that we see in terms of the prices for our main mining exports. We also see a recovery of mining investment, which took a beating in 2020, almost 30% drop in investment, but we're currently projecting between $4,500 and $4,800 million worth of investment in 2021. So we see in recent months significant recovery of investment as well. Unfortunately, we've had we're facing another wave of COVID, as most of the world is, and the government has put in place a number of measures basically to control the spread of the virus. Thankfully, those measures are less draconian in terms, more focused and more driven by evidence than the first time around, where we basically faced a blanket suspension of most economic activities. Peruvian GDP contracted over 11% last year as a result of that of those measures. So the government is more careful this time around to basically put in place more focalized measures to stop the spread of the virus. These measures were put in place on January 31st and for a month. So we'll see at the end of February if, again, we'll face an extension of those restrictions. Again, these are not the sort of general blanket restrictions. The government has embraced a different approach this time around, basically focusing on a limited list of negative measures, meaning that it has spelled out what activities are restricted. Mining is not in that negative list, so we are unhindered by the current restrictions. Mining has continued operating at its previous pace. No reports of problems in terms of getting inputs or getting production out. So the ramp up in production and project construction continues unhindered. That's the good news. So we have a second wave like most of the world, but in terms of the operations of mining, we see continued production, continued investment, and all again with very strict, very demanding health protocols that continue to be put in place. And again, the experience in mining is such that a culture of safety and health is so entrenched that it hasn't been difficult to add that extra layer of measures to control for COVID. So that is working well, and fortunately, we'll continue to expand production and benefit from this very positive context of higher mineral prices in 2021. The future for Peruvian mining is quite bright. We have a very diversified portfolio of initiatives, of projects at different stages for different minerals. Again, Peru has one of the advantages of being a polymetallic country. And what we have in place is a portfolio of 46 projects worth $56 billion. And these projects are concentrated in the northern and southern highlands of the country. Most of these projects are greenfield projects. 91% of total investment linked to greenfield projects, and another 9% linked to brownfield investment. In terms of the mineral scope of the projects, most of the initiatives that have been identified are in copper, about 67% of investment, and gold accounting for 14% of projected investment. Also, some significant resources devoted to iron, which has had a very significant increase in production in recent years, and to a lesser extent, zinc and silver. In terms of exploration, even though we've had a difficult year in terms of exploration because of the drop in flows resulting from COVID in 2020, we have somewhat of a recovery. We need to move faster in that direction. But we have almost $500 million worth of projects already identified, 64 projects in 14 regions in the country. 45% of the projects, this is a somewhat different distribution than the actual investment initiatives that I referred to. In terms of exploration, 45% of it is basically greenfield, then 20% brownfield. In terms of metals, basically most of it copper related, almost 52% of investment in exploration, copper related, and some gold, about 18%, and silver, another 16%. Again, most of this also concentrated in the southern and northern highlands of the country. In terms of what to expect in 2021, we have basically 5 projects under construction. One of them, the projects are Mina Justa, Quellaveco, the expansion of Toromocho, and Santa Maria. And we also have Ariana, which is the 5th project that we should see construction started for in 2021. One of them, Mina Justa, is scheduled to start operations in the 2nd quarter of this year. We also have the beginning of construction for 7 new projects scheduled for this year. 3 are projects that were previously not in under the radar. These are new additions to the portfolio that has been compiled by the Ministry of Energy and Mines. We have 3 projects that were scheduled to start construction last year, but were postponed for this year. And then another one that was already scheduled for 2021 and will proceed accordingly. As you can see in the map, these projects are basically, most of them centered in the southern highlands of the country, and a couple of them in the northern highlands. This is the specifics of the mining investment outlook. As I was saying, the growth will come basically in terms of production from Mina Justa, that should start operating in April of 2021. Quellaveco, which is the most significant investment project that we have underway, should start production in 2022, next year. Yanacocha Sulfides is a very important project in the portfolio, scheduled to start construction this year, pending, of course, approval by the board. And if all things go as planned, this project should move ahead, hopefully second half of 2021. Then we have Pampacancha, which is a project by Hot Bay. Positive news is that the prior consultation process has been carried out and completed with positive results. So the company has all the permits and all the requirements it needs to actually start construction, and it is currently working toward completion of the remaining individual land use agreements to gain full access to the site. Another project, Corani, on January 15, Bear Creek announced the closing of a funding operation. So the process should be aiding in getting this project under construction, and we'll probably see the process get started this year as well. In terms of production, what we see here in the short term, 2021 is an increase in copper production. Again, this linked to what's happened with Mina Justa. In terms of gold, we see somewhat of a recovery of production. And this year, we'll probably see the effect of Yanacocha's Quechua Main project, which began operations in 2019, but we'll probably see more of the impact of that project in terms of gold production. And then again, the incoming production of those medium-sized mines that were lagging behind during recovery last year. And then other metals, iron ore, the plan to double production by 2020 was somewhat delayed, but we see a significant jump in 2021. And tin, the Minsur's B2 project, which began operations before the pandemic, will enhance production this year, adding another 5,000 metric tons of tin by 2022. So again, a very bright future in terms of the portfolio of projects, recovery fully underway, and also an increase in production projected for key metals in 2021. So, what are the key challenges and opportunities facing Peruvian mining? At the national level, of course, the social political context is quite challenging. We're entering elections in April of this year, and we'll have a second round in May. So 2021, we'll see a new government take hold of government. We've had a very rough few months in terms of political instability. Hopefully, constitutional mechanisms in place have enabled the country to overcome those hurdles and to approach elections this year with a very different outlook. So even though this is an issue that worries most investors, I think it's important to note that at least the results of current surveys indicate that they're the most likely candidates to win elections are candidates that have a general positive investor outlook. So there are candidates that are not anti-systemic candidates, and that's a good news. The COVID situation, of course, is quite worrisome. As I've mentioned, we are currently under our second wave. The government has moved quickly to secure the jabs for the COVID vaccine, and has already started and completed vaccination of health workers. There is a schedule of vaccinations already announced, and hopefully this year will reach a very high level of vaccinations. This should lower the risk of having COVID become a major source of distortions for the economy as it was in 2020. But of course, this is quite fluid, and we need to wait and see what the future brings in store for us in the medium term. At the national level, opportunities. Of course, Peru has a wonderful, is a very strong, solid geological potential. We have some policy issues in place. the opportunity for the next government to actually move in the right direction and put in place a major overhaul of mining legislation to ease investments. I think that's likely to happen if we get the right candidate to win the elections. There's a growing consensus now about the need to actually streamline legislation and make things easier for investors, and the knowledge that mining is the best bet for Peru to continue growing and generate the well-being that the population aspires to. Also, a very important issue in terms of opportunities, the possibility of putting in place a program to actually strengthen state capacities to manage this windfall of resources generated by mining. Unfortunately, up until now, the resources transferred as a result of increased mining activity have not translated into the right social policies or enable local governments to close social gaps. We believe that can happen to the extent that the government makes an effort to actually build up capacities at the local levels to use correctly those resources. So there we have a very important opportunity for the next administration. In terms of international challenges, I'm not going to delve much into this. You're probably mostly aware of what the issues are. But again, there are new varieties of COVID. Hopefully we'll be able to, the jabs that we have in place will take care of those. But there's a possibility that might complicate the whole picture. And then again, associated with the latter possibility of a relapse of COVID, downward pressure on mineral demand and prices. We, however, have a positive outlook on the international market, and current behavior of prices is filling that out. In terms of opportunities, again, this huge geological potential is critical to attract increased mining investment, and Peru has been traditionally a very attractive site for mineral investment, and hopefully we'll keep it that way. Also, a huge opportunity in terms of the international scene, the decarbonization of the global economy and trends towards the greening of productive processes open a huge opportunity for Peru in terms of markets for our main mineral exports. So with that in mind, I just like to close with final remarks, pointing out that by way of summary, that we had a very difficult year. 2020 was difficult for the world as a whole, difficult for Peruvian mining. But then again, mining has proven to be quite resilient. And what we see today is a very significant recovery of mining production, mining exports, investment currently above pre-pandemic levels. We have a bright future. We have a huge portfolio of projects that could be implemented in the coming years, and that would literally help us double our production of copper, just to mention one of the key minerals in our export basket. And then again, a potential to bring in more investment. We have a relatively very friendly investor environment, which we hope to enhance and strengthen, and that is a task for the next government. So then again, thank you for your attention, and hope to meet you in person next year in Toronto. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. De La Flor, for your presentation. Now we're going to perform a dynamic that is different from the previous presentations. We will conduct an interview, and we are glad to have with us the Peruvian Minister of Energy and Mines, Mr. Jaime Galvez, who will be interviewed by Cesar Campos, a renowned journalist specialized in political and mining topics, who has worked both in television and the written media. The topic is incentives for mining investment in Peru. It's important to keep the energy on mining investment in the country, both for exploration and the implementation of new mining projects to guarantee the preservation of mining contribution to the growth and development of the country. Without further ado, let's present the interview with the minister. Thank you so much. We are glad to have the Minister of Energy and Mines with us, Mr. Jaime Galvez Delgado, and we will discuss a very important topic regarding his sector's dynamic and also the expectations for the mining industry. Welcome, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Let's start by saying that 2020 has been a very atypical year. And we would like to know what are the checks and balances of the sector, and also what are the expectations for the following years.
Well, so I think that 2020 has been a really challenging year for our country and for the economy, as well as the mining sector. What was the hardest thing to do was to adapt ourselves to working conditions during the pandemic, and fortunately, we achieved that by mid-2020. Starting June, we've recovered production levels that we had before. And the first thing that we recovered was the production of copper and molybdenum. And then we gradually recovered precious metal levels such as gold and silver. We also recovered mining employment, and we are at almost 98% of the pre-pandemic levels.
Okay, you just mentioned the metal recovery process. And now let's talk also about the investment recovery.
Well, so regarding investment, we expected to have $6 billion of investment at the beginning of the year. However, when the pandemic hit, we reassessed the situation and we found that $4.2 billion was a really good estimate given the circumstances, because we basically lost a quarter of investment. At the end, we have an actual outcome of $4.3 billion with a really important recovery of the last quarter of 2020.
There are several projects in the portfolio, as you will know, that we are always expecting to execute. What are the plans to implement these projects this year in 2021?
All right, so first we need to conclude the projects that were under construction that are really important. We have the three largest ones that are the Quellaveco project at a 50% progress. It's a $5.5 billion project in Moquegua. In second place, we have the construction of Mina Justa, which is a copper project, and it's at its 95% of progress. And we expect to start production in April. Last but not least, we have the Toromocho expansion, which first stage already finished, and the second stage is expected to start in March, and luckily finishing the project at the end of the year. Besides, we have a project portfolio that has 7 additional projects for the year. We have a large project, which is the Yanacocha expansion, that it's called Yanacocha Sulfides, that has the same footprint of the project, at $2.1 billion. We have 2 medium projects, such as the silver project in Puno, which is the Corani project, a $400 million project. And then we have a gold project in Ichuña, Moquegua, which is a San Gabriel project with an investment of $500 million. These are the 3 main ones, and then we have other 4 minor projects. They are basically operating mining expansions.
So we're talking about a very significant volume then.
Yes, so we expect for next year to retake the investment in mining and to overpass the $5 billion of investment. And we would like to keep this pace in the following 5 years.
Investments are a very important concern in the sector, but particularly investment in exploration that starts the virtuous cycle of mining activities that finishes with the closing of the mine. What are the efforts of your sector to promote investments on exploration?
Yes, so the exploration is indeed really important for the future of Peruvian mining. We have a project portfolio that is really interesting thanks to previous exploration stages. So until we get a mine, we can wait for a decade or two. So if we do not perform exploration, then mining will stop growing. We have implemented several measures in this last year to dynamize the exploration stages. We have had some really administrative advancements, but however, the paperwork is still difficult in Peru. The most complex thing to do is the prior consultation process, and we're trying to strengthen our social management department in order for us to speed up the prior consultation process, especially in indigenous areas where this process is applied. For such areas in which prior consultation is not needed, then we can continue with the projects without further problems. We have about 60 mining projects in the exploration stage that have been already approved or are yet to be confirmed. We think that these projects could be useful to find really interesting mines during this year and the next one.
It's very interesting that you mentioned the prior acceptance of these projects, because we know that apparently mining is inherently related to social conflict. We would like to know, Minister, what are your efforts to achieve a peaceful social environment? And one of the main issues is water management, which involves the environment, farming, and mining. How can we implement public policies to create harmony among these sectors that evidently should achieve this balance?
So thank you so much for that question, because that's one of our biggest challenges for mining development in Peru in the upcoming years. We want to decrease social conflict, and that is because sometimes we develop mining projects in certain regions, and in fact, mining projects already create a lot of opportunities and create income for the government. However, sometimes this income that we get at a local government scale are not used properly, and that is projected in the project site. So we need to work together as companies, as government, and with the communities, so we can have mining projects as a development factor and not as a conflict factor. So agriculture and mining are really important sectors, because usually mining projects are developed in farming areas. So if the communities see that thanks to mining they can get clear water or clean water and planified roads or sewage and better technical assistance and roads as well as electric power, then mining will get more acceptance, and that will go over the obstacles that we have.
We do have valuable experiences in Peru.
Yes, of course, and we have the engagement of different mining companies that are creating agreements.
You're mentioning this prosperity that we are seeking in the areas of influence where the mining activities are being performed. And that leads us to the question of how the prior social investment is working. This was an essential launch from some years ago by a former administration. What is the current approach of this initiative?
So what we have been working on is that right now the Ministry of Energy and Mines supports a lot the mining projects, especially when they are advanced. What we would like to improve is to be able to provide support since the exploration stage. That will be a great challenge that probably we won't have the time to address in this present administration, but we would also like to activate the Social Advancement Fund, because we would like to share the benefits that we see on the tax revenue and in the mining fee. So this is a really important factor, and we are discussing it with the Ministry of Economy, and we are trying to manage our resources for this year to see how we could launch some project initiatives regarding this fund. Unfortunately, this fund was created, but it has remained inactive. So I think that our first step would be to activate it with some initial projects.
We may consider the Social Advancement Fund as a motivation for the activities being performed by all the surrounding communities. There are some companies, as in the case of Puno, that are promoting this kind of work in handcrafts and also small businesses that we could really boost.
Yeah, so we have a Canadian company that's called Beer Creek that it's related to the Guarani project, and it has a social responsibility policy that is really, really good. And what we have seen is that we are cooperating all together so we can improve the power system along with the Ministry of Energy and Mines. So we are expecting that by the end of the month we could initiate a tender that will allow to improve this power system in order for us to increase productivity in this district of Guarani.
Congratulations for that project, Minister. Another aspect of interest for the sector and also for the Pdac attendees is regarding the informal mining. And the informal gold mining produces more than 1 million ounces of gold per year and generates 400,000 jobs, which are somehow part of the economically active population. Now, this dynamic is very interesting, and the analysts wonder how to incorporate them to formality. There is an incentive proposal to allow informal mining workers to improve their productivity, and this increase would pay for the formality cost. Do you agree? Are there any other alternatives, maybe?
Yes, so for us that's a really important issue in order for us to address small and artisanal mining. Unfortunately, sometimes they confuse this sector with the illegal mining sector, which is a really destructive activity, and we as a government, we need to fight against. So regarding the informal mining, for the informal mine workers, we need to, more than provide them with formalization, we need to provide them with technical assistance in order for them to increase their productivity and to have a better environmental and safety standards, because we see a lot of accidents happening in the workplace of these informal mine workers. So we as a state, we need to provide them with better assistance to get better safety standards in order for us to avoid fatalities and accidents. Right now, we are designing a policy for artisanal mining. This will allow us to create registry and formalization for them, and to also provide technical assistance for informal gold mining that will be mercury-free. We are working with that with the Ministry of the Environment.
Now, we have to approach this sector not only from the state policy perspective, but also from the relationships with the large mining companies. We have to encourage these large mining companies to improve their relationships with these small-scale mining companies.
Yes, that's one of the most interesting challenges that we see regarding artisanal mining, because sometimes they are in touch with different mining companies. Sometimes we see conflicts among them, but then we also find cooperation. We have seen many mining companies creating agreements or conventions with these artisanal mine workers in order for them to be employed by them, and then they can purchase the explored or the extracted minerals. So there are certain companies that have more than 300 artisanal mine workers in our conventions, and they have a really healthy relationship, and that's a good thing to have in the area because they help each other.
That's right, Minister. Finally, we would like to ask you to share some words with the Pdac attendees who would like to know what opportunities does Peru offer for mining development in the upcoming years. And as you mentioned, we have a very short period left to address these efforts, as Francisco Sagasti's administration will end soon. But what are the steps for the future?
Yes, thank you so much for that question. So Peru has this wonderful geology, and apart from that, it's a really friendly country that is able to receive foreign investment, and we have many laws that promote foreign investment and balance. Regardless of our political instability, we have always seen the government support towards mining. What we need to keep improving is the social work that needs to be done in mining areas, and I think that this government and the future government will work on that. But mining investments coming from Canada or other countries are always welcome, and that will always have the government support.
Thank you, Minister, for this interview that is based on real and solid evidence on the Peruvian mining opportunities that we are willing to offer to the world regarding investment, exploration, and development of the mining activity. And as you have mentioned, to achieve healthy social relationship with the communities that benefit. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister Jaime Galvez and Cesar Campos, for this interview. Peru is one of the 10 richest countries in terms of minerals. It is the second largest copper producer and an important producer of gold, silver, and zinc, among other minerals. It has 10% of the world's copper reserves, 4.8% of gold, 19.6% of silver, and 9.1% of zinc reserves, according to the latest data from the U.S. Geological Services. According to EY, copper, zinc, lead, and gold represent 53.8% of the total national exports and the 90.4% of the mining exports value. Without further ado, please welcome Alvaro Ossio, General Manager, Commercial, Finance, and Business Support to MMG Las Bambas, who will present the mining opportunities in our country.
Thanks, Carla, and hi, everyone. I would like to thank the Canada-Peru Chamber of Commerce for the invitation for this first virtual session of Peru Day in Pdac history. Throughout this presentation, I will be introducing MMG and giving a brief summary of Las Bambas operations and its future plans. For the second part of the presentation, we will review the opportunities and challenges for mining companies in Peru and take the last 7 years of Las Bambas experience as reference. 2 years of construction and close to 5 years of operational presence in the country. Las Bambas was acquired in 2014 by a joint venture of 3 companies, Huoxin, MMG Metal, and CITIC Metals. MMG holds 62.5% of the equity and leads Las Bambas operations. MMG is a global base metal miner focused on copper and zinc. It has corporate offices both in Australia and China, and operations in Australia, Dougal River and Rosebery, Kingsbury in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Las Bambas in Peru. Las Bambas is certainly its biggest asset and represents close to 80% in terms of production and EBITDA. MMG is listed in the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, and its majority shareholder, China Minmetals Corporation, is a Fortune 500 company. MMG is a member of and committed to ICMM 10 Principles of Sustainable Development and Performance Expectations. I pull out this slide from a presentation back in 2014 during MMG acquisition of Las Bambas. Back then, these were the main fundamentals that drove this transformational acquisition. First of all, it was clear that Las Bambas was, and is still, a high-quality asset with long life and significant growth potential. In relation to the country, these were the fundamentals that Las Bambas investors identify in the country: high geological potential, qualified and experienced personnel, political, regulatory, and monetary stability, and safety, among others. We believe that most of these previously identified fundamentals continue to be valid. However, on our experience, deterioration was found in some of these factors, but there are always opportunities for improvement. In the second part of the presentation, we will explore some of these in further detail. Las Bambas is located in Cotabambas, a Apurimac region, which is in the southern part of Peru, at an altitude over 4,000 meters above sea level and approximately 700 kilometers away from the Matarani port in Arequipa. It has three main pits: Ferrobamba, which is currently operating; Chalcobamba, which is now under permitting procedures and will start operations in the second half of 2021; and Sulfobamba, which should start operations in the next 5 to 6 years. Las Bambas produces copper concentrate with gold and silver content and molybdenum concentrate as byproducts. Current reserves and resources provide a mine life of over 18 years, but there is a significant geological potential to support the mine life extension. Our production guidance is 2 million of copper in concentrate for the first 5 years of operation, and an average of 300,000 tons per year of copper concentrate in the rest of the mine life. Las Bambas has signed a tax stability agreement with the government of Peru, which stabilizes the tax regime for a period of 15 years. We pay 3% of sales of contractual royalties and 32% as income tax. Safety is our core value, and at Las Bambas, we have achieved a TRIF, total recordable incident frequency rate, of 0.51 per million hours worked in 2020. This represents a significant decrease compared to previous years and is a top performance in comparison to global industry companies. 2020 copper production reached 311,000 tons, which was 19% lower than previous year. Due, all of this, mainly to COVID-19 impacts on our workforce availability. Despite the challenges faced during this 2020 year, a clear focus on safety and effective management of COVID-19 risks enabled us to maintain our operations and return to near full operations by the end of the year. 2021 represents a year of transition. The focus is to keep strict protocols to ensure the good health of our workforce and nearby communities, while at our operations to increase mining volumes to open up additional operating phases. Work continues to complete government permitting and conduct community meetings before starting the development of Chalcobamba pit. Production guidance for 2021 is between 310 to 330,000 tons of copper content in concentrate. Las Bambas copper volumes are expected to recover from 2022 onwards, with an average annual copper production of approximately 400,000 tons anticipated over the period 2022 to 2025. Las Bambas uses a bimodal transportation system. For the first close to 440 kilometers, the concentrate is transported by trucks with special containers until the transfer station of Pillones. Then, the containers are transported by train to the port of Matarani for another 285 kilometers. From our site to Pillones, we pass through 2 regions, 4 provinces, and 14 districts, with over 71 communities and towns. Las Bambas seeks to build a long-term relationship with its stakeholders and promote a model of development in conjunction with the Peruvian government. We continue to work with the government, the communities, and the regional leaders to develop strategies for significant community investments and the development of the communities. Since the beginning of COVID-19 outbreak, in addition to the implementation of strict health protocols off and on site, Las Bambas has provided and will continue providing significant support to communities and local authorities, including the donation of 2 medical oxygen plants, hygiene and health elements, as well as funding and technical support. Las Bambas, with the initial investment of $10 billion, continues being the biggest mining investment in Peru. Additionally, since 2016, Las Bambas has invested approximately $1.5 billion in its operations. Las Bambas has paid approximately 4.4 billion soles in taxes, including royalties of over 1.5 billion soles. Las Bambas currently employs over 9,000 workers, with 25% are from the Apurímac region. Las Bambas' impact on the country and region has been significant. It represents close to 0.9% of the GDP and has contributed significantly to improve economic, social, and health indicators of the region. And we will surely continue growing. As mentioned before, we currently operate Ferrobamba Pit, which is expected to be extended, Chalcobamba, which will start operations shortly, and Sulfobamba in the future. The entire development plan is based on a comprehensive plan that includes the communities, government permits, and the study and execution of the project. An additional investment of over $2 billion is expected for the next 5 years, including the construction of a third ball mill, which is currently in progress, infrastructure like truck shop, fuel stations, campsite, and an additional crusher and conveyor system, among others. In this second part of the presentation, I will present the main challenges and opportunities for mining investments in the country, based on some studies and on Las Bambas' experience. First of all, it is clear that Peru is a mining country with a vast mining tradition. According to the central bank data, for the last 10 years prior to the pandemic, the mining sector contributed 9% to the country GDP, generating 58% of Peruvian exports and 20% of income tax collections. A significant percentage of private investment came from mining, creating over 1.5 million of direct and indirect jobs. Also, and especially during times like this one, the mining sector could generate a significant boost for the Peruvian economy. In this slide, I have included a study developed by Macroconsult and the Peruvian Institute of Mining Engineers, presented by Gonzalo Tamayo during the last Peru Min Convention. This interesting study shows the competitiveness analysis of the Peruvian mining sector compared to other mining countries. As you can see in the chart, Peru scores below the average in several factors. Some are better positioned as the geological potential, but some others as infrastructure, institutions, and regulations below the average. I will use this analysis and include a few more factors to evaluate, based on Las Bambas' experience, the current opportunities and challenges for the mining investments in Peru. It is well known that Peru has an important geological and mining potential, although the recent Fraser Institute annual survey scores Peru below other Latin American countries. The mine exploration pipeline project is quite significant. Unfortunately, this exploration was affected in 2020 due to COVID and other factors. Total exploration was close to 40% lower compared to 2019. However, its potential remains. In the case of Las Bambas, it is located in the Andahuaylas Yauri region, where other important operations are located. It is a very rich area with an existing mining endowment in current projects and operations of over 31 million tons of copper content. This is a very important number. 2 of the 3 biggest skarn deposits in the world are located in Peru, Antemín in the north and Las Bambas in the south part. We have initiated an aggressive exploration program. Currently, we are drilling the southwest extension of the Chalcobamba deposit, with positive results that have contributed to a 13% increase in copper resources at the Chalcobamba deposit. As mentioned before, the mining sector employs more than 1.5 million people directly, indirectly, and in induced positions. Employment was significantly affected during the first wave of the pandemic, but with implementation of very strict protocols, it allowed employment to reach level of previous years. Over my more than 30 years of experience in the mining sectors working with global and local companies, I have always heard of the high quality and experience of the Peruvian miners. And this is clearly one of the fundamentals that MMG identified previous to investment in Peru. The Fraser Institute survey, issued this year, placed Peru top 2 across Latin America regarding labor availability and skills. In the chart of the right, we did an analysis of the years of experience and number of companies in which Las Bambas workforce had participated. In average, a Las Bambas employee has an experience of between 12 to 22 years and has worked in more than 4 mining companies. This is clearly an example of the vast experience of the Peruvian mining workforce. Based on MMG experience in various jurisdictions, Peruvian miners are highly productive. Moving to taxes, there are many studies about the competitiveness of the Peruvian tax regime in comparison to other peer countries. As we see in the top chart, according to IPE, the tax burden is higher in Peru compared to other mining countries. Despite this disadvantage, the Peruvian tax system is designed to promote mining investment by including features like the Tax Stability Agreement, which Las Bambas have signed, accelerated methods to amortize the initial investments, and VAT refund regimes. However, there are still significant areas to be strengthened. Today, tax contingency probably represents one of the highest risks for mining companies in Peru. The main problem is the predictability in the application of tax regulations by the tax authority and the very lengthy periods that authorities and courts take to resolve tax disputes. This generates great uncertainty and a significant financial impact due to high penalties in case of unfavorable outcomes. Mining companies are continually and heavily tax audited in Peru, and therefore there is an opportunity to develop alternate dispute settlement methods to reduce the number of proceedings. In the bottom right chart, it shows the number of tax proceedings in the case of Las Bambas, which they have tripled over the last 4 years, and in average have taken between 6 to 9 years to be resolved. Clearly a very long period of time and longer than the time required to settle tax disputes on other mining countries. In terms of infrastructure, as we can see in this slide, infrastructure gap and quality indicators are negative in various sectors, but especially on transport, which includes roads, trains, and ports. The Peruvian geography is challenging, and usually mining is performed in remote locations. As you can see in the chart on the right, Las Bambas faces greater geographic adversity compared to other large-scale Peruvian and Chilean mines. During construction of Las Bambas, it was necessary to greatly invest on road improvements, train infrastructure upgrades, electricity transmission lines, and the development of a new pier in the Matarani port, together with other 2 mining companies. The deficit in infrastructure is clearly one of the significant disadvantages to attract new investments in comparison to other mining countries. Another factor that has become more and more difficult during the last decades is the growing and slowing regulatory and permitting burden. I recently found out that for the development of Antamina in the late 1990s, a total of 250 permits were required. For Las Bambas, up to now, we have obtained and initiated close to 700 permits. According to Peruvian Central Bank, the regulatory burden for the mining sector has increased exponentially, from 12 to more than 200 regulations during the last 20 years. In the case of explorations, for example, a DIA, which is an environmental procedure for drilling, takes nearly 2 years to get approved in Peru versus 3 months in Chile. The mining companies have been participating in the so-called executive dialogue processes organized by the Ministry of Economy and Finance and the Ministry of Energy and Mines to identify bottlenecks and to propose mechanisms to simplify regulations. Although there are very good intentions, it continued to be slow. Another important factor is the social environment. It is clear that the political instability in Peru has increased during the last years and probably will continue even after the presidential and congressional elections of this year. This instability has generated an increase in social unrest across the country, with a series of road blockages happening nationwide. Also, the number of social conflicts has increased during the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the Office of the Ombudsman, there are close to 200 cases across the country, of which less than half are related to mining activities. Cusco and Apurímac, regions where Las Bambas operates, are the 2nd and 4th most conflictive regions, according to these documents. Las Bambas has suffered ongoing blockages in the so-called Southern Road Corridor, in a national and public road. These blockages affected not only Las Bambas operations, but also other important mining operations in the region. Since the beginning of our operation in 2016, Las Bambas has registered a total of 321 days of blockage, almost 1 year of operation. Although 1/3 were not related to Las Bambas, they still affected our inbound and outbound logistics. Blockages in these national road occur even in very remote locations, which are 200 or 300 kilometers away from the mine. MMG continues to work with the government, communities, and regional leaders to develop meaningful community investment proposals and short and long-term strategies to mitigate impacts. These include road maintenance and improvements, and local and regional development agreements to provide enduring benefits to communities along the mining corridor. As to conclude, we can say that there are significant opportunities, but also challenges for the mining companies in Peru. Clearly, the strong geological potential and highly qualified workforce are strong fundamentals for continuous mining development in Peru. The global economic trends, high commodity prices, and the implementation of new technologies are generating momentum for existing and new projects. However, there are significant areas of improvement. There is a need to continue improving the relationship with the communities nearby the mining operations, and to improve the management of tax revenues generated by the sector, which may contribute to local development. Also, there is a need for an early and continuous presence of the government in the areas where mining projects and operations are developed, to provide the institutional framework for a constructive dialogue, to promote the creation of public infrastructure for communities adjacent to mining projects, and to propose clear and agile processes to obtain licenses and reduce tax uncertainties. Las Bambas continues to be the biggest mining investment in Peru, and we will continue investing more in the country. The fundamentals that prompted the decision to invest in Peru back in 2014 remain valid, although it is clear that there are some opportunities for improvement. However, the mining industry and the Peruvian miners have proven that we are prepared to overcome these challenges. Peru is a great destination for mining investment, and for MMG, a foundation for which to grow in Peru and in the Americas. At Las Bambas, we have only explored 10% of our mining concession. We have a large investment portfolio for the coming years and a long way ahead. Thank you very much.